How's it going, YouTube? This is Crops, aka Beast Beats, and today we have a little bit different of a video. In preparation for the GOAT Grand Prix Fort Worth, Texas, I'm going to do a little Meta Monday breakdown of possibly what to expect. You know, there could be a lot of variants. There could be decks besides these four, and I'm sure there definitely will be. Like different variations of these decks, as well as completely different decks altogether, such as Reasoning Gate / Steingate variants, as well as possibly zombies. You could see World Magical Library, because its Convulsion of Nature is not banned in real life. You could see Empty Jar. You could see Final Countdown, Exodia. I don't know, you could see all these crazy, alt-win things. But let's get into these decks. So, Chaos Turbo, deck number 1. So, you can expect to see decks similar to a list of this nature. Again, people like to put their own twist on things, but BLS, 2 Sorks, 3 Thunder Dragons, 3 Faiths, 3 Decoy Chi. Could be 3 Spy, could be 2 Spy and a Reaper. Kind of depends on what they want to go with there. You got Tsukiyomi, Sangan, Serpent, Tribe, Breaker. Those guys are in just about every Chaos Turbo deck, I'd say. You got the Staple Trinity, Pot Graceful Duo, 2 Upstarts, Heavy, MST, Snatch, 2 Nox, possibly a Book. Possibly could see Card Destruction, Night Assailant, Mask of Darkness, things of that nature. On to traps for this deck, usually 2, sometimes even 0, but I'd say, 0 to 3, but Jar agrees. You got Triple Judgment. They've been kind of, depending on the person, it might even be like a mono judgment list, things of that nature. Trap lineup, they're starting to add back Torrential, but sometimes in the main you won't see the TT, you'll just see like Ring, Mirror, and either Wind Blast or Regeki Break. Kind of depends on what they're expecting or what the player preference is. There's been a long debate on, Break versus Blast. But in this list, Wind Blast with Judgment is usually a pretty devastating setback combo. That's it for it's a 40 card main. In theory, it's a lot. It's less than 40 with all the draw cards, but that's how the deck works. Turbo for a reason. Side deck, you could see things like Reaper if they're not in the main. Depends again on player preference. You can see cards like Ashura Priest, Berserk Gorilla, or Zambira for Warriors, Mobius for like Panda Burn. You could see extra copies of Book, depending on if they're in the main or not. You could see your Mind Controls for the Mirror. You could see Mystic Walks, more famously known as Meme Walk at this point for this deck over here, but we'll get to that. You got cards like Swords, really good in time. You could see, similar to what we saw in one of the other Grand Prix, a burn-sided strategy, because this will be timed Swiss. So things like Token Thanksgiving, I like that card. Usually more than Walk, but I understand for Turbo why they play Walk instead. Battle traps like Sekirets, Armors, and Widespread for this little deck down here that we'll get to next. And then Torrential, again, if it's not in the main, it could very well be in the side. Somewhere in the 40 main, 15 side. So that's kind of the Turbo list. I'll go more into things like side decking wise tomorrow in a little Tech Tuesday. I think it's tomorrow. I don't know. One of these days I'll kind of go on how I would side for different matchups with different decks. Again, that's just how I do it. Everyone has their own way of doing things. Next deck, this is Warriors. So that deck, I guess brief summary, Turbo, they try to draw to their power cards quickly and then have a turn where they can do like a heavy Tribe, Sork, BLS, you're dead kind of play with Ring. And like the life points, they're usually just setting guys, to rack up their resources and then have Judgments and other traps like Wind Blast for defense. And then they just have a turn typically where they can just summon a lot of things. And, usually in GOAT it's like, summon 1 monster per turn. But, if you hold the Chaos up to the very end, you can do like a big blowout play where your opponent's just dead and there wasn't much they can do about it. So it's a scary deck. Definitely tier 1 for a reason. On to the next deck. This is also definitely, I'd say, a tier 1 deck. Warriors. So we got the BLS. I really don't like Sork, but sometimes you'll see it one Chaos Sork in the list. Three BK have it your ways. You know, Blade Knights, this guy is the whopper. You got to have him. Is it focused? Okay. Then we got the Warrior Lady. You typically see that, as well as some amount of Sasuke's you usually will see in the list. Good out to like Spy and Reaper, those cards in the Turbo list. And just the 1800 Light Warrior, pretty solid pick. You might see 0, but usually 1 to 3 between the main and side is what you'll see. Exiled, pretty much every list. Same with level 2. That's in a lot of lists. Another good counter to this deck with all the flips. The Don Zalug, people got those Don goggles. Don Juan Altaco Grande. Cliff, you necessarily usually see that in the main. This is more of a SDL Killa variation of the deck, aka Warrior King. Cliff is usually somewhere between the main and side, though. Decent card for that deck over there. Breaker, pretty standard, as well as some amount of Kaikus. I don't own enough physical copies of Tribe, but Tribe Infecting Virus is usually a decent card for Warriors, whether it's in the main or side as well. Any other notable Warrior monsters? I guess, yeah, Zambara. Sometimes you'll see that in the main or side. I personally not a huge fan of it, based on a game I had, but maybe that's just, a one-time experience. Maybe it is pretty decent to at least side, if not main, a copy of that card. And there was that person from one of the Grand Prix who was maining 3 Zambara and Deck Devastation Virus. Shout out to them. I don't know if that's, necessarily the competitively viable move, but shout out to them nonetheless, because that is spicy. That's cool. Okay, on to the spells. You got the typical, I don't know what I'm saying, Trinity, Pot of Greed, Graceful Duo. You got 2 Rotas, aka 4th and 5th piece of the Trinity in this deck. Honestly, very solid to add, your warrior toolbox. Heavy MST, pretty staple cards. Snatch, Prima, also pretty standard in warrior decks. Unless it's Gravekeeper Warrior, that's another deck that could be there. The Necro Valley, little Gravekeeper package with Necro Valley. In that case, they're likely not on Premature or Call of the Haunted. Then you got 2 Nox and standard, and some amount of books. Typically 0 to 3, I should say 1 to 3 typically between the main and side for that control matchup over there. Then we got Ring, Mirror, Torrential. Not all Warrior players you'll see on TT, but Ring and Mirror is pretty standard. Call, some people have been cutting as well. I still think it's a decent card. Bringing back some of these guys can be pretty important. Some amount of Dust Tornado, usually between the main and the side. The Zinger, sometimes you'll see it on the side, sometimes you'll see it in the main, sometimes you won't see it at all, but that's a neat little tech. Some amount of Battle Traps, Sakuretsu Widespread. Again, this is more of a SDL Killa variation of the deck. He was on a lot of Battle Traps. I believe he was expecting Warriors, so, it just depends on your preference, what you expect to see. And then 3 SJ, the Solemn Judgment. Trying to control the game, pay half, say no. Trap Dust Shoot is another card that I don't own enough of. They're in my Edison decks, but you will likely see some amount of Trap Dust Shoot between either the main or side and Warrior decks, typically. Onto the side, we do have another extra beater for like the Mirror or aggressive decks, such as Berserk Gorilla, or again, you could see the Zambira. You could see Skilled Dark Magician. You got a handful of things you could see there. You got King Tigers, typically in the side. Good against this deck over here, good against that deck over there. Just an all-around good control card to be able to summon. Extra copies of level 2. If they're not in the main, you may typically see a second level 2 somewhere. This is the 3rd Sasuke in this list, but yeah, some amount of Sasuke's again. Mobius, I don't like Tributes and Warriors, but it's pretty much just for that deck over there. And then you got additional copies of Book, possibly. Swords, I think Swords is in every single one of these side decks, or somewhere, whether if it's not in the main, it's in the side. Yeah. Again, this event is timed. Swords can be absolutely insane when you get to the turn 0, 1, 2, 3. Also, Swords, I'd say, is really good against this deck. That's primarily what I put it in against. It's like, aggro or warrior matchups. You do have 2 Smashings. You definitely will probably see some amount of that between either the main or side and a warrior list. United We Stand, this is spicy tech, if you get Ojama locked. But again, that'll be in like a Tech Tuesday video, more talk about that card. Compulse, sometimes you'll see it's not in this side deck of this list, but you sometimes have seen this card in warrior list historically. And then also additional copies of Dust Tornado if they're not in the main, additional Battle Traps if they're not in the main, things of that nature. Typically is what you see in the Warrior list. So again, more of a control deck. Some people call it Helmet, and there are times, Summon Blade Knight set 4 kind of thing. Now, that's it for that deck. Let's go on to the third one I want to talk about, which is Chaos Control. Now, Chaos Control has a lot of different variations that you can see. So this one's going to be a bit, different, like, to discuss. Like, it's not going to, like, this exact list is almost certainly what you will not see, right? Like this card for card kind of thing. You could, but, who knows? So again, with the BLS and 2 Sorks, just solid Chaos monsters to drop down. And you got 3 Thunder Dragon also in this list, in the sense of good being the light and the discard fodder. Some amount of faiths, usually 2, possibly 3 in a Chaos Control list, solid card still. Decent spell lineup. Actually, more spells in this deck than in any other of these decks, actually, now that I think about it. Then you got, in this particular build, this is the same list. I think I did a deck profile on the channel, pretty much, card for card. Is my Mimic list of Chaos Control. So you may see Mimics, like level 1, level 3. You may see Apprentice Magician. You could see, which is a little package up here with the old Vindictive. You could see Golem Sentries. Shout out to Kevin, Fresh IRL. You could see, what other packages? More like Recruiter, Tomato. This has a little Tomato package with the Mimics, the Reaper, the Sangan. You could see Magical Merchant. I'm not a big fan being on Thunder Dragons, but that is a possibility. I think I'm leaving out one particular thing, but that I wanted to mention. Oh well, nonetheless. Rest of this list, so again, you have the Tomato with the Reaper, Sangan, a little more aggro with cards like DD Warrior Lady and Kaiku. You won't always see that in control lists, but Kaiku is definitely a good control card, I'd say. Tsukiyomi, you'll see some amount of these almost always, because we do have, as you'll see in a second, the Thousand Eyes access. Breaker, Tribe, and Serp. These cards, those 3, are pretty standard in a lot of Chaos Control lists. As for the spells, pretty standard as well. Pot, Graceful Duo, Heavy, MST. You'll see a lot of those in list, as well as Snatch, 2 Knocks, 2 Books, 2 Scapegoats. You'll usually see some amount of Scapegoats in a Chaos Control list, and then some amount of Metamorphosis. There's 2 in this list. Usually it'll be 2 or 3. Probably 3 is what most people go with, but there was one time I broke on even just playing 2, so that was crazy. But again, could have been one of just unluckiness, so can't account for those to say, oh, 2 is better than 3. But cool card to give you access to the purple cards, which, actually, let me go over the purple cards real quick. So for the Metamorphosis, notable targets are Thousand Eyes, Restrict, Dragoness, the Wicked Knight is the strongest level 3. Flame Ghost, though, gives you access to a Dark level 3. There's a lot of other fusions right there in that pile of just extra goat fusions, because you can play 3 of every fusion. Dark Fire Dragon, level 4 Dark meta target. Guilt of the D-Knight is a level 5 light target. And then you have Dark Bolt of the Terrible, Fiend Skull Dragon, Reaper on the Nightmare for 5s, as well as that Guilted was also a 5. Very solid level 5 possibilities. There's more than that, but those are just probably the most notable. As well as Ryu Senshi, Dark Blade the Dragon Knight, Ojama King, Dark Flare Knight, I believe that is, and then Super Robos, 1 for direct attacks, 1 for attacking monsters under Messenger of Peace, which, not a very common card, but always want to have it in the back burner. Level 7s, King Dragoon, Last Warrior from Another Planet, Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. There's no 7s in this list, but if your opponent is playing some Fusion Gate stuff, you do have Thunder Dragons for the Twin Heads. And then 8, the only 8 targeting Goat, the Gatling Dragon. And then a couple 9s, well, Master of Oz, realistically, is the only 9 you need. There's, I believe, like the Bee Skull Dragon, whatever it is. But yeah, Master of Oz is the strongest 9 at 42, whopping 4,200 attack points. So that's it for the, again, there's other fusions, but those are probably most notable. One way to access those 7s before I forget is you could side or main like a Tech Fusler Dragon. That'd be kind of neat. Anyway, where was it? Oh, yes. And then you may see upstarts for spells in the deck. Upstarts are, definitely not everyone likes these. And again, it is a timed event. That 1,000 could matter at times, but good for consistency to get through the deck. Then you may see Ring, or you'll likely see Ring, Mirror Force, Torrential, and either Regeki Break or Wind Blast. I personally prefer Regeki Break in this deck to stop like spirit monsters and things, because we are on goats, and I just prefer Regeki Break in my control deck. While Turbo I could see Wind Blast, but let's see. And then for the side deck, so you may see more copies of Kaiku, or if they're not in the main, some amount between main and side. Same with the Tsukiyomi. Sure, Priest could be sided. Nidoria, especially if they're like on a tomato package. You could see Berserk Gorilla or Zambira. You could see Mobius. Kribo is a little spicy tech. May not see it, but it is not bad for like those Panda Burn or Reasoning Gate matchups. You could see Mind Control. Creature Swap is a pretty good one for certain matchups with our like Goat Toke. We have a lot of we have some floaters, scapegoats, SERP cards like that to swap over to our opponent. Swords again, Soul Release, very spicy tech, banish up to 5 cards from either player's graveyard, typically just to your opponents. Token Thanksgiving, again, I just really like that card mostly for the burn matchup. You could also put it in against other decks that play Scapegoat and gain a ton of life points. And again, it is a timed Swiss event. Then we got the 3 Royal Decree, and that's it for this side deck. You may see decrees in the main instead of the side. They may side a little trap package and main decrees. They may just main decrees and maybe the ring and side either like no traps and just be like, all right, no traps today, all the way decree. Now, for the final deck, let's go over Panda Burn. People hate this deck. If you learn how to play against it, the matchup gets easier. You just got to learn instead of complain, because there will always be people playing this deck. I have no disrespect towards Burn. Probably just Library, because that's Solitaire. Let's move on. 3 Giant Rat. So, this is the Recruiter. This lets you float into a majority of the deck. 3 Panda. And then for other rat targets, you got typically things like your Lily, your Exile Force, Morphing Jar, both jars, right? Morphing and Cyber. Once these jars resolve, things could go south quickly for your whoever you are playing against the deck. These obviously there's randomness, right? What the next 5 cards are going to be in both players' decks, but typically that's going to benefit the burn player. Sangan searches, just about lets you add pretty much any card in the deck except for the Breaker. 2 Desquala, you may or may not see that. And then the Breaker, you typically see somewhere between the main and side. And Tribe Infecting Virus, again, I don't own enough copies, but you may see that somewhere in a Panda Burn list as well. For the spells, Pot Graceful, you don't usually see Duo, because you want your opponent to have resources, so Barrel does more, and really, game 1, the goal is for them not to have too many outs to things like Level Limit and Gravity Bind and just be stalled out. Then you got your Heavy, your typically some amount of Tunade. I'm on 3 in this list now. Tunade's amazing in this deck, I'd say. Just the amount of plays you can do with it. Snatch, Premature, Swords, 2 Level Limits, and you may see some amount of Book of Moons. I like it. A play I've done a lot is normal Cyber Jar, set Book of Moon. It's worked pretty much every time I've done it so far. Can be a strong play. Obviously, there's outs to it, but if they don't have the out, getting that Cyber Jar off and not getting it knocked is pretty important. Cards like Desert Sunlight are a possibility, too, for the flips. Gatekeeper Spy could be another monster you see in the deck. That's not too bad as well. We'll get to the side deck. Then you got, for traps, Ring, Ceasefire, Insane Burn Traps. You may see Magic Cylinder. I'm not a huge fan of the card, but you may see it. 3 Trio, 3 Desserts, 3 Barrel. You'll definitely almost always see those 9 traps right there. And then Gravity Bind. If they're not on Gravity Bind, you may see different traps like a Nightmare Wheel. That's another good one. That's the 40 main for this. Compulse is another trap you could see. because it helps getting that Ojama lock, which is like 2 Ojamas in either a ring or a compulse. You can do it in their draw standby phase and just make them have a board of 5 Ojama tokens. Very evil. Onto the side, we got 2 kinetics. You may see this in the main, but I personally don't have too many warriors at my locals, so it's up to what you guys expect to see. You could tech 1 in, you could even only side 1. You got a lot of options here, but kinetic is a popular card you'll see in Panda Burn because of the rat recruitability. Mystic Swordsman level 2, I like this guy. You definitely could see this. Or a Nobleman to cross out. It's a card you could also see in this Panda Burn side or main deck. Additional copy of Book of Moon. If they're not in the main, you could see some of them out on the side. MST, if it's not in the main, it's likely in the side for that decree right there. Also, cards I'm personally siding duo to hit combo decks going first. Mind Control. I got the Mass Driver to respect the mirror, even though I'm the only one who plays it here. At my locals. I don't know about Fort Worth. I'm not gonna say anything about Fort Worth. I don't know how many Burn players there will or will not be. United We Stand. Again, I'll talk about that card in the Tech Tuesday. Prohibition. That needs to go. It's not bad, but I think Solemn Judgment would be better. So you don't have to guess what their answer is to your game shot or like your lock, whatever it is. Then you got some amount of Nightmare Wheels typically. I'm personally in this list siding the 3, mostly for that Warrior matchup over there. And then Mirror Force. I like siding this. You could also side something like Threatening Roar, but again, that'll be talked about more in the Tech Tuesday. So, I believe that's all I wanted to cover. Ooh, we're a little over almost 22 minutes. So, those are some meta decks that you could expect to see at the GOAT Grand Prix Fort Worth amongst the ones I talked about at the beginning. And again, even more than that, it is GOAT. There is a good amount of variation. Definitely can be a fun format. But if you plan to come, it'll be June 11th, this Saturday, starting at 11 a.m. Central. Make your way down. We hope to see you there. It'll be a good event. Going to try to get it live streamed. First place gets a World's Invite, World Mat, as well as a TP4 Morphing Jar. LP to near mint, somewhere in that realm, maybe very lightly played. With that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. This has been Crops, aka Beast Beats, and until next time, bye.